The Valkyrie Dominion had always seen humans as a weak species, a minor annoyance in their path to galactic dominance. For years, they had conquered countless worlds, crushing resistance with overwhelming force. Now they had turned their attention to Nova Prime, one of humanity's outer colonies. The Valkyrie warlords believed the battle would be swift. They were wrong. The attack began without warning. The skies of Nova Prime darkened as massive Valkyrie warships emerged from hyperspace, their crimson hulls gleaming under the planet's twin suns. Within seconds, plasma bolts rained down upon the city of New Horizon, tearing through skyscrapers and sending shockwaves through the streets. The people screamed, running for shelter as alarms blared across the colony. Commander Ethan Carter of the Terran Defense Force had been monitoring deep space sensors when the attack began. The moment the first Valkyrie ship appeared, he knew what was coming. His heart pounded, but his voice remained calm. "Activate planetary defenses. I want every gun we have firing now," he ordered. The colony's defense turrets roared to life, sending streams of energy into the sky. Several smaller Valkyrie fighters exploded, but the larger warships remained untouched, their shields absorbing the damage. Carter clenched his fists. They weren't ready for this. On board the Valkyrie flagship, Supreme Commander Xerath Vol watched the battle unfold with amusement. "Pathetic," he muttered. "They barely fight back." His officers laughed, confident in their fleet's superiority. But then, something unexpected happened. A Terran frigate emerged from the colony's dockyards, its hull scorched but weapons charged. It was the TDS Valor, a heavily armed warship that had been undergoing repairs. Against a fleet of Valkyrie battleships, it should have been no threat. Yet, instead of retreating, it charged forward at full speed. Captain Sarah Lawson stood on the Valor's bridge, her jaw tight with determination. "Fire all weapons," she commanded. The ship's railguns thundered, sending hyper-accelerated slugs into the Valkyrie fleet. One enemy cruiser's shields flickered before a railgun round pierced its hull, detonating its power core. The explosion sent debris flying in all directions. The Valkyrie officers gasped. "Impossible," one shouted. But it was just the beginning. On the surface, Terran Marines mobilized. Soldiers in advanced exosuits took position as dropships deployed reinforcements. The Valkyrie expected frightened civilians. Instead, they were met with battle-hardened warriors who fought with unmatched precision. Private Jack Reynolds gritted his teeth as he fired his plasma rifle, cutting down a charging Valkyrie soldier. His squad was outnumbered, but they held their ground. "These bastards thought we'd just roll over," he growled. "Let's show them what humans are made of." Despite the chaos, Carter knew the colony couldn't hold forever. He turned to his communications officer. "Send an emergency transmission to Fleet Command. Tell them Nova Prime is under attack, and tell them we're not going down without a fight." Back on the Valkyrie flagship, Supreme Commander Vol's amusement turned to frustration. He had expected submission, not a counterattack. He leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in anger. "Prepare the dreadnought's main cannon," he snarled. "Let's end this." The battle was far from over. But one thing was clear. The Valkyrie had underestimated humanity, and they were about to pay the price. The skies above Nova Prime were a battlefield. Valkyrie warships hovered like dark predators, their cannons spitting plasma toward the planet's surface. Fires raged in the cities below, and terrified civilians huddled in shelters as the war unfolded. But despite the overwhelming force of the Valkyrie invasion fleet, something unexpected was happening. The humans were fighting back, hard. On board the TDS Valor, Captain Sarah Lawson barked orders. Her ship had already crippled one enemy cruiser, and she wasn't about to stop now. "Target their command ship. I want all railguns firing at their engines." The Valor's cannons roared to life, launching a barrage of high-velocity slugs. One round found its mark, slamming into a Valkyrie battleship's rear thrusters. The ship lurched as explosions tore through its hull, sending it spiraling toward the planet's surface. On the Valkyrie flagship, Supreme Commander Xerath Vol seethed. How are these humans still resisting? He demanded. One of his officers, a nervous-looking lieutenant, swallowed hard. Sir, they are not retreating. They are counterattacking. That was not supposed to happen. No species had ever resisted a full-scale Valkyrie assault like this. Meanwhile, on the ground, Commander Ethan Carter and his Terran Marines held the main defense line outside New Horizons City. Valkyrie drop pods smashed into the streets, spilling out squads of alien warriors with energy blades and plasma rifles. The first wave had expected an easy victory. Instead, they ran straight into a wall of gunfire. Hold the line, Carter shouted as he fired his rifle, cutting down an advancing enemy. His men took cover behind wrecked vehicles and hastily built barricades, unleashing precise volleys of fire. Their armor was strong. Their tactics were perfect. And they fought without fear. Private Jack Reynolds ducked behind a burning transport, reloading his weapon. They'd really thought we'd just roll over, he muttered. They should have read human history. A squad of Valkyrie shock troopers charged forward, their energy shields absorbing incoming fire. But before they could reach the human position, a squadron of Terran combat drones descended from the sky. Their autocannons lit up the battlefield, shredding the enemy troops in seconds. Carter smirked. They think we're weak. They have no idea who they're messing with. Back in orbit, the Terran fleet had received Nova Prime's distress signal. The response was swift. From the depths of space, a formation of human warships emerged from hyperspace. Their hulls were sleek and deadly, bristling with advanced weaponry. At the front of the fleet was the TDS Warhammer, a battleship feared across the galaxy. Admiral Marcus Steele stood on the Warhammer's bridge, arms crossed as he surveyed the battle below. They picked a fight with the wrong species, he muttered. All ships engage at will. Show them what it means to wage war against humanity. The sky erupted with fire as the Terran fleet unleashed devastation upon the Valkyrie armée. Missiles streaked through the void. Railgun rounds tore through enemy shields. The Valkyrie, who had been so confident just moments ago, now found themselves on the defensive. On the enemy flagship, panic spread among the crew. Sir, we are losing ships. Fast, the lieutenant stammered. Exareth Vol's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. This was impossible. Humanity was not supposed to be this powerful. He snarled. Then it's time we show them our full strength. As the battle raged on, neither side knew that this was just the beginning of a war that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The Valkyrie fleet, once confident in their overwhelming numbers, was now in chaos. Explosions lit up the void as Terran warships ripped through their formations with deadly precision. What was supposed to be an easy conquest had turned into a nightmare. Admiral Marcus Steele stood tall on the TDS Warhammer, watching the carnage unfold on the tactical display. He spoke calmly, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience. They expected us to break. Instead, we're breaking them. The bridge crew worked efficiently, coordinating firepower with the rest of the fleet. The TDS Titan, a Terran dreadnought, fired its main railgun, sending a hyperdense slug straight through the core of a Valkyrie battleship. The enemy vessel shattered like glass, debris scattering into space. Another kill confirmed, an officer reported. Steele nodded, pressed the advantage. No mercy. Down on Nova Prime, the streets were a war zone. Commander Ethan Carter and his Terran Marines had turned the city into a fortress. Auto turrets lined the rooftops, drones patrolled the air, and snipers picked off enemy officers from the shadows. The Valkyrie, used to conquering lesser species with ease, had never faced an opponent like this. Every street they advanced on became a killing ground. Every ambush they set was countered with brutal efficiency. Carter fired his rifle, dropping another enemy before ducking behind cover. They're losing ground, he said, his voice grim. They don't know how to fight a war of attrition. Private Reynolds, reloading next to him, chuckled. They thought we were just another weak species. Bet they're regretting that now. The Valkyrie commander on the ground, General Korek, was growing desperate. His forces were being cut down in droves, and he had severely underestimated human resilience. He turned to his comms officer. "Tell the fleet to commence orbital bombardment," Korek growled. "Wipe them out." Up in orbit, the remaining Valkyrie warships adjusted their trajectories, preparing to fire their planet-killer weapons. The skies darkened as massive plasma cannons began to charge. On the TDS Valor, Captain Sarah Lawson saw the readings and her heart went cold. "They're preparing to wipe out the entire city," she realized. She opened a direct channel to Admiral Steele. "Sir, they're going to bombard Nova Prime. We need to stop them now." Steele didn't hesitate. "All ships, full assault. We take them down before they fire." The Terran fleet surged forward like a pack of hunting wolves. Missiles streaked across space. Railguns fired at blinding speed. The Warhammer led the charge, tearing through the Valkyrie's remaining defenses. A Valkyrie battleship exploded, then another. Their formation crumbled. But one enemy cruiser still had a clear shot at Nova Prime. Its plasma cannon reached full charge, glowing with deadly energy. Inside the cruiser, the Valkyrie gunner prepared to fire, until his screen went black. Wah! A Terran infiltration virus had shut down the ship's weapons systems. Then, from below, a single human fighter raced toward the cruiser at full speed. It was a suicide run. The pilot, Lieutenant Alex Hayes, gritted his teeth, sweat dripping down his face. Not today. He slammed his fighter straight into the enemy ship's exposed power core. The explosion was blinding. The Valkyrie ship erupted in a fireball, its plasma cannon never getting the chance to fire. On the Warhammer's bridge, Admiral Steele watched the debris drift through space. He exhaled. "Good work, Lieutenant," he said softly. The Valkyrie fleet was broken. The survivors began retreating, their ships vanishing into hyperspace. On Nova Prime, the remaining Valkyrie ground forces surrendered, throwing down their weapons. The battle was over. But as Carter surveyed the battlefield, he knew this was just the beginning. "They came here thinking we were weak," he muttered. "Now they know the truth." Humanity had proven its strength, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The war was supposed to be over. The Valkyrie fleet had been shattered, their ground forces forced into surrender. But the echoes of the battle reached far beyond Nova Prime. Across the galaxy, species who once saw humans as insignificant were now staring at the wreckage of a defeated empire. And they were afraid. In the halls of the Galactic Council, leaders of hundreds of species gathered in a tense emergency meeting. The room, once a place of orderly diplomacy, was now filled with panic and hushed arguments. The Valkyrie ambassador Zorkun, battered and still humiliated from the crushing defeat, stood before the assembly. His voice trembled with barely controlled rage. "The humans have revealed their true nature," he hissed. "They are not just another species. They are a galactic menace. If they are not stopped now, they will only grow stronger." Murmurs filled the room. Some species agreed. The sight of a mighty empire like the Valkyrie being obliterated had shaken them. But others had seen something else in the battle. They only defended themselves, spoke Ambassador Gulnera of the Talshur, a race known for their neutrality. The Valkyrie attacked first. The humans simply fought back. Zorkun slammed his clawed hand against the table. "And look at what they did. They didn't just repel us. They annihilated our fleets, sabotaged our systems, and turned our weapons against us. No species should be capable of that." Across the chamber, an Uldari warlord chuckled, his reptilian features twisted into something that resembled admiration. Perhaps the Valkyrie were simply too weak to win. The words sent a ripple through the room. The Uldari were one of the most feared warrior races in the galaxy, and if even they respected humanity's strength, it meant something dangerous. Meanwhile, on Terra, the news of the battle spread like wildfire. The public erupted in celebration. The military had just won one of the most decisive battles in history. Soldiers were hailed as heroes, and recruitment stations were flooded with eager volunteers. But behind closed doors, the Terran High Command was already preparing for the next move. In a secure war room deep beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Marcus Steele, President Elaine Carter, and top military leaders analyzed the situation. "They won't forgive us for this," President Carter said, her expression hard. "The Valkyrie are humiliated. The other empires are afraid. This isn't over." General Vasquez, an older veteran with decades of war experience, nodded grimly. "We've shattered the illusion of weakness. Now the galaxy knows what we can do." Steele leaned forward. "Which means we have two choices: prepare for an alliance or prepare for war." Silence filled the room. No one doubted the reality of the situation. The Galactic Council had tolerated humanity for years because they thought of them as nothing more than an insignificant upstart species. But now they knew better. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the debates raged on. Some leaders called for peace talks, believing that angering humanity further would be suicide. Others, like Zorkun, demanded immediate military action to contain the human threat before it was too late. Then, a new transmission interrupted the meeting. The holographic image of Admiral Steele appeared in the center of the room. His gaze was calm but unyielding, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a man who had already won a war. "I believe you're discussing the future of humanity," he said, looking around the room. "So allow me to make something very clear." The chamber fell into absolute silence. We did not start this war. We did not seek conflict. But when we were attacked, we fought back. And if you think humanity will ever kneel, you are gravely mistaken. He let the words sink in before continuing. "If you seek peace, we will welcome it. If you seek war," his voice darkened, "then you will learn firsthand why the Valkyrie begged for mercy." The transmission cut out. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Council was truly afraid. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent long after Admiral Steele's transmission ended. The weight of his words hung in the air like a storm cloud, and the assembled diplomats, generals, and rulers shifted uneasily in their seats. Humanity had issued a warning. Not a threat, but a clear message that any move against them would be met with overwhelming force. Zorkun, still seething, turned to the other council members. "We cannot allow them to dictate terms to us. They must be dealt with immediately before they grow even stronger." But Ambassador Velanera of the Tal Shur shook her head. "You speak of war as if it is an easy thing. The humans have already proven they are not to be underestimated. Do you truly wish to risk another disaster?" The debate raged on, splitting the council into two camps: those who wanted war and those who sought peace. Meanwhile, deep within Valkyrie space, in the capital city of Zalcor, Supreme Chancellor Vortal listened to the council's transmissions with an unreadable expression. His empire, once feared across the stars, had been humbled by a species they had considered weak. His fleets were in ruins, his armies demoralized, and his people were beginning to question his rule. A group of his top generals stood before him, awaiting his decision. "We cannot afford another war with the humans," one of them admitted reluctantly. "Our forces need time to rebuild." Vortal's claws tapped against the armrest of his throne. "And yet," he said slowly, "if we let them grow unchecked, they will become an even greater threat in the future. The moment to strike is now." "But how?" Another general interjected. "Our ships are no match for them, and the council is divided. Even if we push for war, not every empire will support us." Vortal narrowed his reptilian eyes. "Then we must force their hand." A sinister plan was already forming in his mind. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Terran High Command was also preparing. Admiral Steele stood in the war room, staring at a holographic display of the galactic map. Red markers indicated enemy fleets, while blue symbols showed Earth's allies. Too few to rely on. Humanity was strong, but if the entire council united against them, they would be outnumbered. President Carter entered the room. "What's the situation?" Steele exhaled slowly. The Valkyrie are planning something. I can feel it. They're too proud to let this go. Then we need to be ready, Carter said firmly. I want every colony, every fleet, and every soldier prepared for the worst. Already in motion, Steele confirmed. But there's something else. Our intelligence network picked up strange movements near the outer colonies. We believe the Valkyrie might be planning a false flag attack, something to frame us and rally the Council against us. Carter's expression darkened. If they turn the entire galaxy against us, even we may not be able to fight them all. Steele's jaw tightened. Then we have to stop them before they can make their move. Across the galaxy, the pieces were falling into place. War was no longer a possibility. It was an inevitability. In the cold void of space, the Valkyrie fleet moved with precision. Their warships, battered from their last conflict with humanity, had been refitted and reinforced. But they weren't heading for Earth. Not yet. Instead, they gathered near a neutral colony world, one under the protection of the Galactic Council. Vortal's plan was simple but deadly. If they could frame humanity for an unprovoked attack, the entire Galactic Council would have no choice but to declare war. The humans were strong, but they could not fight the entire galaxy alone. From the bridge of his flagship, Vortal watched as his ships took position around Eldoria Prime, a peaceful trading hub. Begin the operation, he ordered coldly. At once, dozens of stealth drones were deployed. These machines carried advanced Terran weapon signatures, stolen from battlefields in their last conflict. They would attack Eldoria Prime's main city, leaving behind evidence that pointed directly to Earth. It was a perfect trap, and if it worked, humanity would be doomed. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Steele stood in the war room, reviewing intelligence reports. Something wasn't right. Their surveillance drones had detected strange movements near Eldoria Prime, but there was no official council activity in the region. He frowned. They're up to something. General Hayes, standing beside him, nodded. Our spies intercepted encrypted transmissions between the Valkyrie and an unknown party. We haven't cracked it yet, but there's a pattern. It matches previous war mobilization codes. Steele exhaled sharply. They're setting a trap. The room fell silent. President Carter's voice came through a secure line. Do we have proof? Not yet, Steele admitted. But I know they're planning something. Then we need to act fast, Carter said. Send a fleet to shadow their movements. If they try anything, we need undeniable evidence before they frame us. Steele nodded. I'll send Task Force Omega. They're our best recon unit. Within minutes, the Terran warship Vindicator, equipped with the latest stealth technology, was en route to Eldoria Prime. If the Valkyrie were plotting something, they would soon have nowhere to hide. At that moment, on Eldoria Prime, Governor Raylan of the Galactic Council stood on his balcony, staring at the night sky. He had heard rumors of growing tensions, but he believed that humanity and the Council would never go to war. How wrong he was. Without warning, the first explosions erupted. Massive fireballs consumed sections of the city as missiles rained down from the sky. Panic spread like wildfire. Citizens screamed, alarms blared, and emergency sirens echoed across the colony. Governor Raylan turned to his guards. Who's attacking us? One of them, frantically checking reports, paled. Sir, the weapons match Terran technology. Raylan's blood ran cold. Across the galaxy, a message was already being sent to the Council. Eldoria Prime is under attack. The humans have struck first. It was a lie. But soon, the galaxy would believe it. The Valkyrie warlord Vortal stood before a holographic transmission of the Galactic Council, feigning outrage. Humanity has shown its true nature. They have attacked Eldoria Prime, a neutral world under your protection. He thundered, his mandibles clicking in simulated grief. This is an act of war. Across the chamber, council members murmured in shock. Some looked hesitant, while others, long wary of humanity's rising power, nodded in agreement. We cannot let this go unanswered. An Avaxian diplomat declared, "We must strike back before they become an even greater threat." It seemed like the trap had worked perfectly. Humanity was about to be declared an enemy of the entire galaxy. Then, the chamber lights flickered, and a holographic feed glitched. A new voice, cold and commanding, cut through the noise. "You are all being played." The image shifted, revealing Admiral Steele standing aboard the Terran flagship Vindicator. His eyes were steely, his presence unshaken. Behind him, a series of intercepted transmissions began playing. First, the encrypted orders from the Valkyrie High Command, explicit details of their plan to stage the Eldoria Prime attack. Then footage from the Vindicator's stealth drones, capturing Valkyrie ships deploying the stolen Terran weapons moments before the assault. Finally, the raw, unedited distress call from Eldoria Prime's governor. The original version, not the doctored one that had been spread. Silence fell upon the chamber. One by one, council members turned their eyes toward Vortal, whose mandibles twitched in panic. Steele's voice rang out like a judge passing sentence. "You wanted to frame us for a war we didn't start." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Now the whole galaxy knows the truth. Panic erupted among the Valkyrie delegates. Some scrambled to distance themselves from Vortal's plot, while others remained frozen, realizing their fate was sealed. The Trillian ambassador, once a strong supporter of war against humanity, now spoke with a trembling voice. This is undeniable proof. The Valkyrie have betrayed us all." The Council's supreme arbiter turned to Vortal, her expression dark with anger. "You have not only tried to manipulate us into war, but you have disgraced the very foundation of the Galactic Council." Guards stepped forward to arrest the Valkyrie delegation. Vortal snarled, reaching for his sidearm. But before he could act, a high-pitched energy pulse struck him down. His own people had turned against him. As he collapsed, his last thoughts were of fear, not for himself, but for his entire species. Because if there was one thing worse than making humanity your enemy, it was failing to defeat them. Back on Earth, the war room was silent. Then cheers erupted. Humanity had not only survived the biggest political attack in galactic history, but they had turned it into a resounding victory. President Carter exhaled, shaking his head. "They thought they could frame us. Now the Valkyrie have no allies left." Admiral Steele crossed his arms. They wanted war. He glanced at the live feed of the Valkyrie homeworld, where riots had already begun as their people learned of their leader's betrayal. Now they'll be too busy fighting for survival to ever challenge us again. Humanity had not started this war, but they had ended it.